I took 1 week off, 1 week, and then everything in the gaming world went crazy. It's gonna be a long video. It's Sunday, so let's get sensational. I'm Mike, and I'm back to talk about the gaming news. And sorry I missed last week. I just came back in town from a work trip, and I got back on Saturday afternoon, and I was like, this video ain't gonna happen, capping. So this week, we're gonna talk about the biggest stories from the last 2 weeks, and of course, last week, the biggest story was the whole Switch 2 pre-order fiasco. Now, you probably didn't need to watch this video to know that pre-orders for the Switch 2, well, they basically sold out instantly. It was a typical affair with websites basically crashing from all the traffic and making it almost impossible to get a pre-order in at all. But there is a pre-order option through Nintendo Direct where if you're subscribed to Switch Online and you have a certain amount of playtime on your Switch, you can sign up to receive an invite from Nintendo to pre-order a Switch 2, and those invites start going out on the 8th of this month. Well, apparently Nintendo underestimated the demand for the console, and they had to tell their Japanese customers that they wouldn't have enough Switch 2s to fulfill all the pre-orders on June 5th. And then shortly after that, they put out the same warning to US customers as well, that they can't guarantee delivery on June 5th for all of the orders. In Japan alone, they received 2.2 million pre-order registrations for the Switch 2, which, putting that in context, the Switch 1 sold 2.74 million in the first month worldwide. So with that context, I can understand how Nintendo may have underestimated how many systems they would need to produce for launch. Now, I will say I did end up getting a pre-order through Walmart a couple of days after retail pre-orders went up, because they would just randomly have some come back in stock, and I just happened to be sitting in an airport with nothing to do last Saturday, and they came back in stock for about an hour, and I got one. Now, the reason I found one is because I follow Matt Swider on X. He's pretty fast at posting when stock is available. I was already following him anyway because of the PS5 and Xbox launches when they were hard to find, and I was able to get both of those during the pandemic, and of course now the Switch 2. So if you are trying to find one and you use Twitter or X, you can always follow him for restock notifications. But you won't need to be notified about a certain Rockstar game because it's not coming out this year. So the long, and I mean long awaited GTA 6 was supposed to come out this fall, but it has been officially delayed until May of 2026. Rockstar basically said they want to take the time to deliver the level of quality we deserve and expect, AKA, it ain't gonna be ready this year. I think that's fine. It's better to delay it than try to rush it and deliver something broken out of the gate. But while I'm fine with waiting a little bit longer, apparently investors were not, as Take-Two shares took a big hit after announcing the delay. For the investors, they were expecting this huge volume of money to come in this year from the game launching, and now it's not. Take-Two's CEO put out a statement basically saying they support Rockstar's decision and that they're committed to making good games, and once the game launches, it's still gonna make a bunch of money anyway. So obviously they anticipated they were gonna have this negative reaction from investors, which is why they had the statement ready. Either way, I'm sure that Take-Two and Rockstar will be fine, and the game will still sell a bunch of copies once it releases. Maybe in 2036 at this point. And speaking of things that are going to take us well into the next decade, did you know that Apple and Epic are still in court over the whole Fortnite being pulled from the App Store thing that happened in 2020? So back in 2021, because this has been going on for a long time now, a lawsuit went to court where Epic was trying to prove that Apple had a monopoly on mobile app stores, which the judge ruled that they didn't, but they did say that Apple had to allow third-party payments on their app store. Now, the big thing with using Apple's payment method is that they take 30% commissions on all sales, which is why Epic ended up suing them along with Google, because they do the same thing. And since the 2021 ruling, Apple has allowed third-party payment methods, but they put up a warning screen if a user clicks on it, and they were still taking 12% of the revenue from the payments outside of their own app store. Well, the judge has now ruled that this was a violation of the ruling and that they can't put up a scare screen to deter people from using third-party payment methods, and they can't collect revenue from those payments either. So as a result, Tim Sweeney, Epic Games CEO, has announced that Fortnite will be back on the Apple App Store next week, basically for the first time since this whole thing started in late 2020. Apple is appealing the decision, so I don't think that either company will ever stop being in court over this. But it looks like for now, Fortnite is finally coming back to the App Store for the first time in like 4 years. All right, it's that time of the week again where we talk about layoffs, and since I took last week off, we got even more than normal. So let's go back to last week and talk about Meta, aka Facebook. So Facebook has kind of become the front runner in VR just because they make the most affordable headsets and they have a ton of features. But it is a small space right now, and it's kind of been on the downtrend for a while. Meta even raised the price of the Quest 2 close to the end of its life cycle because they were losing more money than they expected. In fact, they said last April that they were losing over $1 billion a month in VR. So it should come as no surprise that they laid off 100 employees across their AR/VR hardware and gaming division. It's also reported that employees from Reality Labs and Oculus Studios have been let go. Meta has been pretty quiet about the layoffs, other than saying that they're still committed to investing in mixed reality experiences, and there was no comment related to what support they were offering employees that are losing their jobs. But Meta wasn't the only one to do layoffs last week, and this developer is a lot smaller. So Mighty Yell, who is based in Toronto, also announced layoffs last week. They've only released 2 games so far, an adventure game called Big Con and a VR game called Night in the Attic, and they're currently developing their 3rd game, All Systems Dance. But they've run into some issues with funding and they had to cut some jobs as a result. They didn't say how many people were laid off, but I'm assuming that they're probably a pretty small developer. They put out a statement saying how difficult it was to have to make these cuts and that they wanted to be transparent about the layoffs and the difficulty with getting game funding right now. They also said that their next game is coming, but right now they're focused on supporting their team through this difficult time. So yeah, it sounds like the developers still need those people, but they just couldn't get the funding to keep them. I personally feel more empathetic for these smaller studios than I do for these huge companies like Meta and the next company we're talking about, which is EA. So Electronic Arts really needs no introduction. They're one of the biggest publishers in the world, and they own several studios, including Respawn, who made the third-person Star Wars action games Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, and they also made and currently maintain Apex Legends, and before all that, they were known for making Titanfall. Well, EA announced this week that they cut 100 jobs from Respawn and 200 jobs from other studios within EA. Along with cutting the jobs at Respawn, it's also being reported they canceled the Titanfall game that was in the early stages of development. EA put out a statement basically saying that they did these cuts for efficiency, one of the 3 reasons every big company says when they do these type of cuts. And they did say that they were supporting the employees and helping with job placement, which is at least better than what Meta said, which was basically nothing. But game developers and studios aren't the only gaming-related companies in turmoil recently. So there are a couple of gaming publications that are in trouble, which is particularly important to me because, for one, obviously I visit them a lot for these videos and I find the stories there, but also I just grew up reading a lot of these sites and looking at the articles, looking at reviews. This has kind of always been part of my life since I was a kid. And one of the sites I look at regularly that's also in trouble is Polygon. So it's being reported that Polygon has been sold by Vox Media to Valnet, which owns the site Game Rant. And as a result, a large number of staff have been laid off or quit, according to the PC Gamer article, including the editor-in-chief and one of the co-founders of the site, Chris Plant. We talked about Game Informer coming back recently, and the fact is that there's not really a lot of traditional media sites for games left. So once these jobs are gone, it's not easy to find a similar position for another company. And also for Valnet, who purchased Polygon, if they're not getting most of the staff, they're basically just getting the name, which maybe that's what they want since they already have another gaming publication. Maybe they want to rebrand that one to Polygon. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I really feel for the people who lost their jobs, and I'm sure that the publication won't be the same without the original people there. For now, I'm holding off on using Polygon as a source since I don't know what's going to happen with them and their new leadership, but it seems like it's already off to a bad start. Now, the next gaming site I don't pull stories from, but it's really near and dear to my heart on a personal level, and that's Giant Bomb. Now, I followed Giant Bomb on and off since they formed in 2008. I mean, it really goes back before that because I watched people like Jeff Gerstmann and Alex Navarro back when they worked for GameSpot, and I was huge fans of theirs. And then there was a whole drama where Jeff Gerstmann got fired, and then he started Giant Bomb. And so for me, I've been following them for most of my adult life. And even though all the GameSpot originals left a few years ago, I still occasionally kept up with their content. But even with the current iteration of Giant Bomb, I still really like people like Dan Reichert and Jeff Grubb and Jan Ochoa, even with all the original GameSpot people being gone. But unfortunately, it is a corporate company, and through their tenure, they've been sold multiple times, and their current owner is Fandom, the people that make way too many wiki sites. Actually, it kind of made sense for the fandom to be interested in them since Giant Bomb has a wiki as well. But anyway, apparently the staff had a falling out with fandom over editorial interference, and they kind of threw shade at them on the last episode of the Giant Bomb cast, which has now been deleted. As a result, Dan Reichert and Jeff Grubb said that they're no longer with Giant Bomb or doing any more content for them. The other people on staff haven't said anything yet, but the official Giant Bomb account put out a statement saying that it was relaunching. But the thing with Giant Bomb is that it was already a personality-based site. That's why people watched it, and in a lot of ways they were doing what people do now on YouTube way back in 2008. People watched the videos and listened to the podcast because they wanted to hear from those people. So if those people leave, then all they would have is a name, but it's kind of meaningless without the people behind it. This is anecdotal, but I saw the post on Facebook because I guess back in the day I followed their page on Facebook and I forgot. And they disabled comments on it. So obviously they know that the community is not happy with whatever's going on behind the scenes. But rant aside, this one is way more personal to me just because of how long I followed Giant Bomb. And I'd be lying to say if it wasn't one of the reasons that I started making videos in the first place. I'm still going to support the people that I like from the site and whatever they do going forward. I still listen to the podcast from all the original staff that left, but it sucks that it might be the end of Giant Bomb, but everyone that works there is very talented, so I'm sure they'll find new ways to reach the former Giant Bomb audience. All right, I would normally say the bad news is over, but it's not because we still got to talk about the Xbox. So let's just go ahead and talk about it today. In our final story. So a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Sony raising PS5 prices in several regions outside of the US. And at the time, I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more price increases. Well, the Xbox has followed suit as Microsoft is raising their prices everywhere, including the US, and it's a pretty significant increase. So the Xbox Series X disc version is going from $500 to $600. The digital edition is going from $450 to $550. The 2TB edition is going from $600 to $730. And even the cheaper Series S is getting a big increase, with the 512GB model going from $300 to $380, and the 1TB going from $450 to $430. They're also increasing the price of accessories, but for the most part, it just seems to be a $5 or $10 increase, with the exception of the full edition of the Elite controller that comes with all the accessories. That's increasing by $20. On top of that, they were also saying that some of their first-party games will be $80. Now, Microsoft didn't come out and say why they're doing these large price increases, but we know it's because of the whole tariff situation in the US. A lot of things are going to increase in price as a result of the tariffs, and now that Microsoft has bit the bullet and increased the console prices in the US, I wouldn't be surprised to finally see Sony do a price increase in the US as well. I feel like they definitely will on the game front, since both Microsoft and Nintendo will now be charging $80 for some of their games, and they both increase the price of their accessories. So yeah, it's not a great situation. If you're in the US and considering buying a PS5, I'd probably get one before the price increases. Some third-party companies have also been hit as a result of the tariffs as well. Ambernick, who specializes in retro hardware, announced last week that they're halting shipments to the US. And this week, 8-Bit Do restricted shipments to the US to stuff they already have in their US warehouse. And anything in their Chinese warehouse will not ship to the US due to tariffs. In both cases, they said it's temporary, but who knows how long this whole tariff on, tariff off thing, is it on or off now? Okay. Anyway, who knows how long it'll last. But we'll see how everything shakes out, but it's not looking great right now. But let me know what you think in the comments about this week's stories. Do you think Sony will finally increase the price of the PS5 in the US or the price of their games? Again, let me know down below. And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell notification button thing to be notified when I drop a video or a live stream. And I always do at least 2 things at the same time.